Early March 1943, inside a blistering, anonymous maintenance hangar in Port Moresby, New Guinea, a single aircraft violated every regulation in the United States Army Air Force manual. This medium bomber, a B-25 Mitchell, had been transformed into something utterly unauthorized, where a bombardier's glass nose should have been. 8 brutal, forward-firing 50-caliber machine guns now protruded, giving the aircraft the menacing silhouette of a true gunship. This weapon shouldn't exist. It was an illegal experiment born from one man's searing personal rage. Captain Paul Irvin Gunn, known as Pappy, was not fighting for glory or medals. He was fighting his own private war to free his family, who were locked in a Japanese prison camp after the fall of the Philippines. This unauthorized, desperate machine, facing down a court-martial if it failed, was about to trigger the most devastating naval defeat the Japanese would suffer in the entire Pacific campaign. This is the story of the B-25 Strafer, the ship killer born of fury, and the 4 days that proved rules are sometimes meant to be broken. The journey to this illegal transformation began 2 years earlier, on December 8, 1941, Manila time. Paul Gunn, then a civilian manager for an aviation company, stood at Nichols Field, watching Japanese bombers systematically demolish the American Air Forces in the Philippines. As American defense crumbled, Gunn's wife and children were trapped and soon imprisoned. The agony of their capture, the direct result of America's unpreparedness, fueled a personal commitment to vengeance. Having worked on aircraft design and maintenance for decades, Gunn joined the Army Air Forces, bringing with him a deep, specialized knowledge of airframes and a profound belief that the existing doctrine was fatally flawed. The primary American bomber in the Southwest Pacific was the B-25 Mitchell. It was designed for medium-altitude precision bombing, a tactic utterly unsuited for the dense, unpredictable weather and small targets of the Pacific theater. Against Japanese ships, which were often fast-moving and heavily defended by escort destroyers, a medium-altitude attack was a suicide run with minimal chance of success. Commander of the 5th Air Force, Major General George C. Kenney, quickly realized his bombers needed a new method, a low-level attack that could neutralize a ship's defenses and destroy it with minimum risk to the aircraft. This was where Captain Gunn's obsession found its opportunity. Gunn recognized that a low-level attack, flying at masthead height, required 2 things the B-25 lacked: pinpoint accuracy and devastating frontal firepower to suppress anti-aircraft gunners during the attack run. The solution was the skip bombing technique, where a bomber dropped a fused bomb that skipped across the water's surface like a stone, hitting the ship's hull near the waterline and exploding below the belt armor, causing catastrophic damage. But skip bombing was only effective if the anti-aircraft gunners were silenced first. Gunn knew a standard B-25 with its single low-powered nose gun could not achieve this suppression. The regulations were clear. The B-25 was a bomber, and any major structural or armament changes required layers of bureaucratic approval from the Materiel Command back in Washington. Gunn knew those approvals would take months, time he couldn't afford to lose while his family remained in captivity and Allied forces were being starved of supplies. He began his work in secret, utilizing the chaos and distance of the forward operating base in New Guinea. With the tacit, unwritten approval of General Kenney, who believed in practical results over bureaucratic dogma, Gunn transformed the aircraft. His masterpiece was the nose section. Working with his maintenance crew, he stripped out the bombardier's compartment, replacing the fragile glass and specialized equipment with a solid metal shroud. Into this new armored shell, he mounted 8 powerful 50-caliber machine guns, each capable of firing 750 rounds per minute. With the addition of 2 existing nose guns and 4 in the fuselage blister packs, the B-25 Strafer now mounted a total of 16 forward-firing 50 caliber machine guns. This was a firepower load previously unheard of on a medium bomber. This was an aircraft that could spray 1,000 rounds per second directly into a ship's bridge and anti-aircraft positions, ensuring the crew was either dead or pinned down, allowing the plane to complete its skip bomb run. Gun's initial trials, conducted in secret off the New Guinea coast, proved the concept viable. The intense recoil and structural stress were immense, but the modified airframe held and the accuracy was terrifying. The first B-25 to receive this modification was christened the Strafer, and the design was rapidly applied to others in the maintenance pool. By early 1943, General Kenney had a small private fleet of these illegal gunships, and they were about to be tested in the ultimate crucible of naval warfare. That test came with the Japanese plan to reinforce their collapsing position in Lae and Salamaua, New Guinea. In late February 1943, a massive Japanese convoy, 8 heavily loaded transport ships, escorted by 8 destroyers, set sail from Rabaul, carrying 12,000 reinforcements and critical supplies. Intercepted intelligence alerted the Allies to this convoy, which, if successful, would prolong the New Guinea campaign indefinitely. The Japanese convoy had to be destroyed, and the task was given to General Kenney's 5th Air Force.
The Battle of the Bismarck Sea, fought from March 2 to March 4, 1943, became the devastating vindication of Gun's illegal innovation. On the first day, the Japanese convoy was subjected to a coordinated, unrelenting attack by Allied bombers. But it was the B-25 Strafer squadrons, flying the low-level skip-bombing attack profile, that inflicted the terminal damage. They approached the convoy at wave-top height, their guns blazing a torrent of lead. The 8 forward-firing guns concentrated a volume of fire previously seen only by ground attack fighters, wiping out anti-aircraft crews before they could effectively return fire. Following the initial strafing runs, the B-25s released their bombs, which skipped precisely across the water, smashing into the vulnerable, unarmored hulls of the transport ships. The secondary explosions, occurring below the waterline, were catastrophic. Within 48 hours, the Allied air forces had annihilated the entire convoy. All 8 Japanese transport ships and 4 of the 8 escorting destroyers were sunk. Over 3,000 Japanese troops were killed or drowned, and all the essential supplies, ammunition, and fuel were lost to the sea. The Japanese High Command was left reeling from the scale and speed of the destruction. Post-battle reports described the intense, low-level fire as unprecedented, completely overwhelming their ship defenses. They could not comprehend an aircraft with that kind of concentrated horizontal firepower. The loss was devastating, both materially and psychologically. It halted the Japanese drive in New Guinea and forced them onto a permanent strategic defensive in the Southwest Pacific. Captain Gun's unauthorized modifications, born from his determination to see his family freed, had achieved strategic effects disproportionate to the small number of aircraft involved. The B-25 Strafer became the new standard for the B-25, with his design eventually adopted, legitimized, and mass-produced by the Army Air Forces as the B-25G and B-25H models. Gun received the Distinguished Service Cross, not a court-martial, and continued his work on aerial gunnery and ground attack. The modified B-25 Strafer was not the sole weapon that won World War II, but it was a crucial turning point, a symbol of what happens when personal motivation aligns with military necessity. Gun refused to accept the imprisonment of his family as inevitable. He refused to accept that existing weapons were adequate. He refused to accept regulations that prevented innovation. That refusal, combined with his technical skill and General Kenney's strategic support, produced a weapon system that destroyed hundreds of Japanese ships, killed thousands of enemy troops, and ultimately secured the path for Allied victory in the Pacific. And most importantly to the man who built it, that victory shortened the war and eventually led to the freedom of his family.